welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a shortcut to being truly well-informed about a fascinating figure from the Renaissance.
A woman who really shaped her time.
Exactly. Eleanor of Toledo. You've asked us to unpack her extraordinary life, and we'll do that specifically through the lens of, well, one of history's most iconic portraits.
And Yolo Bronzino's Eleanor of Toledo with her son Giovanni, it's instantly recognizable.
It really is. And this isn't just, a beautiful painting. It's more like a meticulously crafted official statement.
A statement of power, definitely, and a testament to the sheer sophistication of the Medici court.
Right.
And what's truly fascinating here, I think, is how much profound meaning can be condensed into just one single visual. We've got a rich stack of sources for this deep dive. Everything from really detailed art history analyses to biographies, even some surprising forensic reports.
Oh, interesting. Forensic reports.
Yes, they add another layer entirely. They'll help us peel back the many layers of this masterpiece and, maybe more importantly, the remarkable woman it depicts.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to go way beyond just the surface of this famous painting. We want to understand not just what Bronzino painted, but why it mattered so much back then.
And what it still tells us today about Eleanor herself, her influence, the whole era.
Exactly. So let's unpack this. Okay, Eleanor of Toledo, or to use her full name, Leonor Alvarez de Toledo y Osorio. Born in Spain, 1522.
Right. Her father was Don Pedro Alvarez de Toledo, a very powerful figure, the Viceroy of Naples.
So her upbringing was, steeped in that world.
Absolutely. The Spanish viceregal court, famously strict, very formal, but also incredibly extravagant and prestigious.
A world of protocols, but privilege, too.
Definitely. It was almost like a gilded cage in some ways, highly formal, focused on decorum, Spanish Catholic piety.
Right.
But it gave her this incredible grounding in administration, courtly life. It really prepared her for a role that turned out to be far more influential than perhaps anyone expected at the time.
And then she married Cosimo I de Medici in 1539. She was just 17.
Yes, and he was only 20, very young.
Now, there's that romantic legend, isn't there? That they fell immediately in love when Cosimo visited Naples.
Ah, yes, the story.
It's a good one.
But the records tell a different tale.
They do. Letters exchanged before the wedding actually confirm they married without ever having seen each other.
Wow. Was that really common then, even for powerful nobles, marrying sight unseen?
Oh, incredibly common. Standard practice, really. Dynastic marriages were all about strategic alliances, consolidating power, territory.
Less about love, more about politics.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But what's truly remarkable about Eleanor and Cosimo, despite it being arranged, is that a genuine deep affection clearly developed between them.
Really?
Yes. Cosimo was notably faithful to her throughout their marriage. That was exceedingly rare for a ruler of his stature back then.
That is rare.
And he actually insisted on marrying Eleanor. He remembered her beauty from a previous encounter, apparently, even when her father offered a bigger dowry with her older sister.
No kidding. So he chose her specifically.
It seems so. It suggests a genuine regard, even early on, beyond just the politics. That's fascinating. And she quickly became much more than just Cosimo's wife, right, as Duchess of Florence. Some historians even call her the first modern First Lady.
That label, first modern First Lady, it's quite significant, isn't it?
It is. What does she do to earn that?
Well, it reflects how Eleanor truly redefined the role of a consort. She wasn't just a figurehead or, only there to provide heirs.
But she did do that very successfully.
Well, absolutely. 11 children. An astonishing number. 5 sons and 3 daughters reached maturity, securing that Medici line.
Vital.
But she was also Cosimo's constant companion, and more importantly, she actively co-governed. She served as regent during his frequent absences.
Like when he was off on military campaigns. Or sick.
Exactly. Military campaigns in Genoa, times of illness, and this wasn't just symbolic. She was pragmatic, hands-on. She exercised a level of real political influence far beyond what was typical for noble wives then.
So effectively co-running the state at times. That's formidable. And her influence wasn't just political, was it? Extended into the economy, too.
Absolutely. This is another area where she really broke the mold. In an era where noble women's influence usually came through birth or marriage, Eleanor built her own kind of financial empire.
How so?
She had incredible business acumen, quite rare for a woman of her standing. She personally managed and sold agricultural goods, grain, livestock, even got into beekeeping and silkworm farming.
Silkworms, wow.
Yes, and her involvement extended to mining products, too.
So this wasn't just spin money.
Not at all. It wasn't just about personal wealth, though she managed that well. Her shrewdness significantly expanded the Medici estates, and she dealt fairly, which actually benefited the peasantry. It strengthened the Medici financial base quite independently of Cosimo's politics.
Incredible. A real economic force. What else defined her influence?
Well, her piety was central. That Spanish upbringing really stayed with her. She became a major patron of Jesuit churches, founded the first Jesuit school in Florence. She was a constant intercessor for the order, and she founded the prestigious Santissima Concezione convent. Plus, she made solid donations to charities, supported Cosimo's policies to restore Florentine independence, and she would even plead causes for commoners who couldn't get access to the Duke directly.
A channel for the people.
Yeah.
And her passion for the arts. That was significant too, not just a passive observer.
Far from it, a truly notable patron, commissioning works from the giants, Bronzino, of course, but also Giorgio Vasari, Niccolo Tribolo.
Big names.
Absolutely. She famously commissioned and oversaw the frescoes by Bronzino in her private chapel in the Palazzo Vecchio, a very personal space right in the heart of Medici power.
Right.
But maybe her most ambitious project was buying the huge Pitti Palace.
The Pitti.
And supervising the creation of its famous Boboli Gardens, which were known for being unusually open, expansive views, quite different from the more enclosed, formal gardens common then.
So that shows her personal taste, making a big architectural statement.
Exactly.
It sounds like she was incredibly driven, incredibly effective. But you mentioned earlier that contemporary opinions about her were split. How do we square this powerful image with those varied perceptions?
That's a really crucial question, because it makes us think about public image, right? How much is the real person? How much is curated? Or even just how people see them, especially back then.
Sure.
Some contemporaries saw her as, well, overly religious, maybe too Spanish. Apparently she preferred speaking Spanish, even used Spanish priests to negotiate for her, and didn't really embrace Italian fully.
Okay, that might have rubbed some Florentines the wrong way.
Possibly. Others called her a gambler or a shrew, someone who spent too much time at the Medici countryside villas, maybe neglecting court duties in their view. And her public demeanor was quite stern. But that was perfectly in line with Spanish noble customs rarely seen in public, always surrounded by guards. Very different from the more, perhaps, open Florentine court style.
So what looked like aloofness might have just been cultural difference. Expected Spanish decorum.
Very likely, yes. It could easily be misinterpreted.
But despite these differing opinions, her overall impact on Florence seems undeniably positive.
Oh, absolutely. Regardless of what individuals thought, she was a huge boon to Florence, securing the dynasty with all those children, bringing that massive Spanish dowry.
Right, the dowry, more financial stability.
Exactly. And despite many portraits showing her as maybe cold or aloof, including the famous Bronzino one, we're focusing on contemporary accounts, the ones written by people who actually knew her.
What do they say?
They describe her as charming, practical, determined, a devoted traveler, apparently loved to gamble, and definitely fashion conscious, constantly employing weavers.
So a much more dynamic picture emerges from those who knew her personally. And modern science has added yet another layer, hasn't it? Something about her health.
It really has. Forensic examinations of her remains, done much more recently, revealed she suffered from a significant calcium deficiency from the constant pregnancies. 11 children takes a toll. This scientific insight gives us crucial context. It helps explain her poor health later in life, maybe even her appearance, which contrasts sharply with those idealized, robust portraits Bronzino painted earlier.
A reminder of the real physical lives behind the grand images.
Exactly.
Tragically, she died young. Pisa, 1562, just 40 years old, malaria.
Yes, and it was a particularly tragic time because it happened shortly after two of her sons, Giovanni, who was 19.
The one in the portrait.
The very same. And Garzia, who was 15, also died of malaria.
Oh, awful. All around the same time.
Yes. And for centuries, this really dramatic myth circulated.
What was the myth?
That Garzia had murdered Giovanni, perhaps in a hunting accident or quarrel, and then Cosimo, in a fit of rage and grief, killed Garzia himself.
But heavens.
And the story went that Eleanor then died of a broken heart from it all. It's a very dramatic, almost operatic story.
I can see why it captured the imagination, but it's not true.
Not true. Modern exhumations, forensic science, they definitively disproved it. The evidence confirms they all tragically died from malaria, probably contracted during a family trip to the coast near Pisa.
Wow. Science debunking centuries of myth.
It's a powerful example of how compelling stories can sometimes overshadow historical truth until science helps us find the facts.
It really makes you question the stories we hang on to, doesn't it? Okay, let's shift focus now directly to the masterpiece itself. The portrait by Agnolo Bronzino. He was Cosimo's court painter for a long time.
Indeed, almost 25 years. Bronzino, active from 1503 to 1572, he was the consummate court artist.
Known for?
Renowned for what contemporaries called his spontaneous naturalness, but also his incredible ability to reproduce textures. Making fabrics, jewels just seem incredibly real, almost touchable on the canvas.
Like you could reach out and feel the velvet.
Exactly. Giorgio Vasari, the famous Renaissance biographer and artist himself, praised Bronzino's portraits, saying they were so natural that they seemed truly alive. He was the perfect artist for someone like Cosimo who really understood the power of visual propaganda.
And this specific portrait, Eleanor of Toledo, with her son Giovanni, painted around 1545, it's in the Uffizi now.
Yes, in Florence.
And it's not just famous, it's considered one of the most iconic portraits ever, right? A key example of Mannerist portraiture.
Absolutely preeminent.
How do we know the date, 1545, so precisely?
Well, we can date it pretty accurately. Eleanor was 23 then, Giovanni was just 2. He was born in 1543, and his features fit that age perfectly in the painting.
Okay.
And furthermore, we actually have a letter from Bronzino himself, specifically asking for a larger amount of expensive lapis lazuli pigment for a painting's background in 1545.
The blue background.
Exactly, that specific, vibrant blue. It supports the dating and highlights the expense involved. That lapis detail is important for what it signifies.
Okay, so in the painting, Eleanor is shown from the knees up, seated on this rich red velvet cushion, leaning against a balustrade, with this dark, almost moody landscape behind her. The pose you mentioned maybe recalls Titian a bit.
It does, subtly. There are echoes of powerful portraits by Titian, but Bronzino gives Eleanor a much more formal, distant look, almost untouchable.
Right. And you suggested this portrait was designed to be a paradigm, a model for European royal portraits for centuries. What made it so revolutionary?
Several things make it really significant. Firstly, it's the first known state portrait of this scale and formality to actually include the ruler's heir. Giovanni, who was, remember, Eleanor's second son.
Right, not the firstborn.
Exactly. So his presence isn't just charming, it symbolizes dynastic continuity. It's like insurance, you know? If something happened to the firstborn, the Medici line was secure.
Makes sense.
And Eleanor's hand resting on his shoulder, it signifies protection, her role as the fertile mother, securing Florence's future, the Medici legacy.
Very deliberate symbolism.
Very. And the lighting is striking, too. They appear illuminated by this almost divine daylight, set against that dark nocturnal background. It throws every detail into sharp relief, especially their clothing and jewels.
And the painting definitely gives off a kind of sacred aura, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. That radiating royal blue background using the lapis lazuli we mentioned.
The most expensive pigment.
Right. Traditionally reserved for painting the Virgin Mary's mantle in religious art. So that choice, combined with their triangular composition like a classic Madonna and Child, powerfully evokes that iconography. It elevates Eleanor's status, makes her seem almost like a supernatural creature, or at least a Madonna-like figure. It subtly links her fertility and dynastic role to divine favor.
And the lighter blue around her head, almost like a halo.
Exactly. It gives that impression. It's not just portraiture, it's subtle deification, reinforcing her importance.
So when modern viewers sometimes see her expression as cold or aloof, maybe noticing not much interaction between mother and son, that's actually a deliberate artistic choice, part of the Mannerist style for court portraits.
Precisely. It's really important to remember this wasn't meant to be a warm, fuzzy family snapshot.
Right.
It was entirely unlike the warmer, more interactive religious depictions of Madonna and Child that Bronzino himself also painted. This stern, detached demeanor was part of the carefully curated image.
Of a powerful regent.
Yes, a symbol of the Medici state. It conveys authority, gravitas, not necessarily personal warmth. It emphasizes her public role over private emotion, maybe like how a modern leader projects composure.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's talk about that dress. It's maybe the most recognizable part of the painting, a masterpiece in itself.
Isn't it just? It's incredible. Eleanor is wearing this famously elaborate damask brocade dress, black and gold motifs, very typical of high Spanish fashion, made from terciopelo velvet.
And the detail Bronzino captures.
breathtaking. The gold parts reproduce pomegranates. The black parts have these elegant arabesque motifs. Just stunning detail.
And the accessories are just as striking.
Absolutely. That gold and pearl net on her head, a Spanish style she introduced to Florence, and the drop pearl earrings. And what's really noteworthy there, if you look closely, her ears are visibly pierced.
Pierced ears. You mentioned that was unusual for nobility back then.
It was. This is a fascinating little detail. Until shortly before this time, pierced lobes were often considered kind of disreputable for noblewomen, associated maybe with African women or sailors, not the aristocracy.
So why here? What might it signify?
Well, it likely acquired a new meaning, perhaps a symbol of the wife's dedication to her husband, almost like a vow of chastity, or maybe even a bold assertion of her Spanish background and influence. It's debated.
Interesting. And the necklaces.
2 pearl necklaces, one with a magnificent diamond and pearl pendant, and then that stunning gold belt at her waist.
Covered in gems.
Yes, intricately set with gems, ending in a beaded tassel. Some art historians even speculate it might have been designed by the famous goldsmith Benvenuto Cellini, though the descriptions don't perfectly match.
Wow. Cellini. And that belt, even if just ornamental, had deeper symbolism too, didn't it?
It did. It wasn't just decoration, it was a powerful marital symbol. Traditionally, a belt like this was fastened by the bride's father on the wedding day, and then ceremonially unfastened by the new husband on the wedding night, signifying preserved chastity and the consummation of the marriage.
Right, and the gems on it. Diamond, ruby.
Diamond, a palacio, which is like a ruby but a paler red and an emerald. They're believed to symbolize virtues, maybe faith, charity, and hope, or perhaps nobility, loving-kindness, and fertility.
Fertility again.
Always key. And what's also quite telling as you look closely, she's surprisingly not wearing a wedding ring in this portrait.
Oh, I didn't notice that, unlike other portraits of her.
Exactly, which seems to further emphasize that this portrait's primary focus is really on her fertility, her role in securing the dynasty, rather than just her marital bond with Cosimo.
Fascinating. Now, there's that popular story about the dress itself, isn't there? The dramatic one.
Yeah.
About her being buried in it.
Ah, yes, the buried dress myth. It's a very romantic idea, and it circulated widely, especially after 1888. The legend claimed Eleanor was actually buried in this specific famous gown, but the exhumations and the later restoration work on her body, they definitively ruled it out. She was found wearing a different dress, entirely a simpler, though still elegant, white satin dress.
So the myth is just a myth.
Completely. Which leads us to a pretty crucial point, actually. It's now widely believed by art historians that this incredibly sumptuous dress in the painting is largely an invention of Bronzino's imagination.
Really? He made it up?
Well, maybe not entirely from scratch, but he likely didn't paint her from life wearing this exact gown. He probably used fabric samples, maybe sketches, combined with his own artistic flair to create the ultimate symbol of status. There's no matching description of this specific dress in the detailed Medici records.
So this iconic dress, the symbol of so much, might actually be a magnificent piece of artistic license, a fiction. That's quite something.
It is, isn't it? But even if partly invented, it was undoubtedly a dress that perfectly reflected Eleanor's known taste for grandeur. It was designed to express her status ruler's wife, symbol of Florentine power.
Right.
Its obvious preciousness, the meticulous way Bronzino painted it, it just screams wealth and authority. But beyond personal display, it also served as a very shrewd political statement.
How so, politically?
Well, the expensive fabric itself symbolized Florence's booming silk textile industry. Cosimo I had worked hard to revitalize it, promoting it as a cornerstone of the city's economic strength. So the dress is like an advertisement for Florentine manufacturing prowess.
Ah, so the dress itself was kind of propaganda for the Medici economy.
Precisely. And the pomegranate motif woven into it, not just decorative.
Symbolizing
marriage and fertility, perfect for Eleanor's role as mother of the Medici heirs, but possibly also hinting at imperial connections' unity under one authority, like the Habsburg Empire, whom the Medici were very keen to stay close to.
Okay. And all this incredible wealth on display, the dress, the jewels, that also signal her supreme status.
Right.
Especially thinking about Florence's sumptuary laws.
You're absolutely right to bring those up. Sumptuary laws were strict rules all over Europe dictating what different social classes could wear, basically preventing commoners from dressing like nobles.
So restricting displays of luxury.
Exactly. The sheer unrestrained opulence of Eleanor's attire in this portrait, the pearls, the diamonds, the amazing fabrics, it sends a clear message. She is completely above those laws, exempt. This portrait was essentially a very elaborate, very beautiful piece of propaganda for the entire Medici dynasty, representing stability, legitimacy, immense wealth, dynastic security. These portraits were often copied and sent abroad as diplomatic gifts, reinforcing that powerful message across Europe.
So let's bring it all together. What does this all mean for us looking back today? Bronzino's portrait of Eleanor of Toledo is clearly far more than just a beautiful Renaissance painting.
Oh, much more. It's a meticulously constructed image. Power, virtue, dynastic security, all wrapped up in one.
It tells us about Eleanor, not just as a duchess, but as this formidable regent, a prolific mother, a living symbol of Medici Florence's ambition, its grandeur.
And despite what you might call the protocol or rigor, the formality of the state portrait, Bronzino's genius somehow lets hints of the real woman peek through. The one chroniclers described wise, loving, majestic. It's just an eloquent testimony to the court's taste, its political ambitions, and the artist's skill.
And the fact the portrait was copied so many times, disseminated widely, that really underscores its importance in cementing Eleanor's image across Europe, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And even today, centuries later, it powerfully shapes how we remember this remarkable woman. It invites us to look closer, to question the stories behind the canvas.
It really does.
Which maybe raises an important question for you, our listener, as you navigate the world today. When you look at public images now, think carefully curated social media, slick political ads. How much of what you see is truly real? And how much is, well, a strategically designed message, a kind of contemporary state portraiture created to shape perception, convey specific ideas?
That's a great thought to end on. We hope this deep dive into Eleanor of Toledo and her iconic portrait has given you some truly memorable insights, maybe even change how you look at public images just a little bit.
Food for thought.
Definitely. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.